Hey, good morning, Violent Community. Thanks for dropping in. Tony's LPs are us back again. I'm going to do a quick countdown 10 records that are debut albums. Some of them were flops, some of them went on to be huge hits. But even with the flops, the artists that had the initial, mediocre, not doing too well albums went on to superstardom. So I'm going to list these records and go over them a little bit and show them to you. They're originals, except for one I believe might be a second pressing. But we're going to start off with Little Richard. This album was released on April 4th, 1957. It was number 50 on the Rolling Stones Great 500 LPs of all time, greatest hits. The artist was born on 12/5/32. He was about 24 when he recorded this. Let me see here. 1957, this album charted on the Billboard Pop album charts at number 13. Was recorded in New Orleans in J&M Studios and LA at Master Recorders. And that's this album. Here's Little Richard. This is an original specialty. I'm very happy to find this. I actually got this from a woman who had a great collection of 45s and LPs from this era. Like I said before, this debuted in 1957. And the running time is only 28 minutes and 30 seconds. Richard Wayne Penningman, known as Little Richard. And on here is Tutti Frutti, Ready Teddy, Slippin' and a Slidin', Long Tall Sally, Miss Ann, Rip It Up, Jenny Jenny, She's Got It. So this started it. He started it with Elvis, and that's it right there. And Elvis covered a few of these on Elvis's first and second albums, I believe, on RCA. Here's the actual label. I'm going to show this. Prerequisite for VC community people. That's a beautiful pressing. This is VG Plus. One of my prizes. Very happy to have this. Hard to find, of course. The next up is an album that charted very well as well, and that was in the summer of '65. It peaked at number 2 on Billboard's 200, went gold. It was number 1 on both sides of the Atlantic as far as the single that was released, and it was produced by Sonny Bono, and that's Sonny and Cher's debut album. And I believe this is a second press because it has the hit hype sticker that was integrated into the actual cover art. And here you have, it's very rare that they list the session men. And a lot of these guys were the actual session guys that did most of these hits, including Blaine on drums. And there's only 4 original Sonny songs on here. I Got You, Babe, Sing La Vie, It's Gonna Rain, Just You, and the rest are covers. Even Phil Spector has a song title here that he wrote called Why Don't They Let Us Fall in Love. They also do I Really Got a Hold on Me. You Really Got a Hold on Me from Smokey Robinson. And here's the Atco. This is a stereo copy. The next album everybody knows. It's one of the greatest debut albums of all time. It was released on January 4th, 1967 in the U.S., recorded Sunset Sound Recorders Studios in Hollywood, California in August of 66. It debuted, or peaked rather, on Billboard's 200 at number 2, and it was number 86 on the Rolling Stones 500 Greatest Albums of All Time, and that's this debut. Right here, The Doors, the Gold Electra, and I'll show you the inner. It's the gold inner. That's the album label. And we all know what happened to the Doors. We all know the fame that they went on to. This album is still coveted. It's been re-released. It's been done on analog productions of 45 RPM. me just get something just dropped here. Excuse me. So this is, like I said, a very important debut album. And this should be in everyone's collection. The reissue from Analog Productions is unbelievable. I believe they had to use a saved copy of the master tape, because I believe the master tape on this is lost, but it sounds incredible. I have the Analog Production, but this is the original. I believe this is a stereo. Next up, we have an album from Columbia Records that didn't do really too well, but it did fairly well. It did pretty good, but not as good as later albums that they released. This was released on February 21st, 1968. It topped at 47 on the Billboard Pop charts. Runs out about 49 minutes, 18 seconds. So it's pretty long record. And this company, this manufacturer, this label, was able to squeeze a lot of music into those grooves and still made them sound good. This was recorded at New York City at CBS Studios when they installed a 16-track recording studios. And this also features Randy Brecker, who went on to be part of the Brecker Brothers, and Al Cooper, who we all know Al Cooper. And that is Blood, Sweat, and Tears' debut album, which is a cool album. And most people don't know the back of this album. It's, you don't see the back too often. The back has a lot of good information. And this is called Child is Father to the Man. And this is a 2i, I believe. Let me show you that. Here's the inner. CBS Records. And here's a really nice, if you want to get this album, you try to get the 2i. And this album did fairly well, like I indicated, but didn't do as well as later on when they brought in Adam Clayton Thomas, the Canadian singer, who went on to great heights. He had a commanding vocal presence, and that's Blood, Sweat, and Tears' first album. The next up is a debut album that's very important as well. This was just re-released by MoFi on a one-step. This is a super folk rock band. It released May 29, 1969. Topped out at number 6 on the Billboard 200, four times platinum. Checks in at about 41 seconds, so it's a pretty good length, a normal length. And this was recorded at Wally Heider Studios in Hollywood. So we all know that anything from that studio, especially if Wally did the cutting on that, if you see Wally in the Dead Wax, it's going to sound really good. And that's this album. Crosby, Stills, and Nash. Obviously, right before they added Canadian Neil Young. And I'll show you the insert. This is a gatefold. It has an insert, which was rare in those days to have a lyric pullout. And I don't know if that's upside down. This is the inner from Atlantic. Has some of their records on it. Zeppelin 3. I'm not sure if this was in the original, but this is the inner I found in this. And here we have a really nice VG Plus or better Atlantic pressing. So I'll show you the gatefolds. And we just lost Crosby this year too. And that's a really nice. Really nice. Next up is kind of an anomaly. This record only clocks in at 34 minutes, so it's definitely short. 34:54. It was a flop in an initial release. Reissues have been noted. It was released in 1971. These two, it's a duet album. It's a girl and a guy, and they actually met when in the Detroit cast of Hair in the 70s. This is released on Rare Earth Records from Motown, a subsidiary of Motown. And let me see what else I have here. It has a great 70s vibe. It reminds me of the ensemble work that you hear on a Leon Russell record, or Joe Cocker with Mad Dogs and Englishmen, Delaney and Bonnie. It has that American vibe. It didn't do well, but the artist whose name is present in the title went on to super stardom, and we just lost him a few years ago, and that's Meatloaf and Stoney. Meatloaf and Stoney. Stoney is the girl. Meatloaf is the guy. And the girl is Sean Murphy. And that's in Shrink, which is amazing. 1971. Original Shrink. Here's the back. You could freeze that out if you like. And like I said, it has a pretty good vibe. You can listen to it on YouTube. The whole album is on YouTube. Here you see Rare Earth Records. I'll show you the label. It has the Rare Earth label. If you have any Rare Earth, the group records, that's their label. They were released on Motown as well. One of the few white soul bands or white pop rock bands on Motown Tamla. And that's a really nice copy. I think I've only played this a few times. I bought this years ago. It's actually a saw cutout. And once again, I'll show you the cover. It's pretty cool. So 6 or 7 years later, Meatloaf took off after he was in the Rocky Horror Picture Show. He recorded the Meatloaf album with Steinman, I believe. Next album up is another debut album. This was debuted in U.S. on June 20th, 1969. It was recorded as number 451 on Rolling Stone's 500 Greatest Hits of All Time. It charted number 1 Billboard and charted number 1 R&B. So that gives you a little hint. It was a kind of a solid release when it came out in '69, but when it was in a movie, an Eastwood movie called "Play Misty for Me," the single and the record peaked at number 1. So that's this album, which is fantastic. First time ever. And we know First Time Ever I Saw Your Face, Roberta Flack. This is a tremendous album. Has Ron Carter's on here, a lot of top jazz people. It's actually a jazz vocal LP. It's listed under jazz. Ron Carter, John Pizzarelli, who I met. He's from New Jersey. Great guitar player on a million things. Ray Lucas on drums, Ron Carter bass, Roberta Flack piano and vocal, so it's really stripped down, but it's fantastic. This is the first press, and this is on Atlantic as well. This is considered excellent. I got this for $1. I cleaned it off. The time I cleaned it was February 14th, 2000, and that's that right there. This has been reissued a number of times. There's also reissued with extra footage, extra tracks on CD, I believe. So this is a must-have for you. And like I said, it's a number 1 album. The next album, the artist went on to become a major superstar in American recording, but the first album flopped. Didn't even use his real name. This was released in 1976. And the manager thought that the artist's true name would not sell any records, so we dubbed him Johnny Cougar. And later on, we know when Johnny Cougar Mellencamp, or John Mellencamp later on, got bigger and bigger, he jettisoned Cougar. He was not happy with that. They also, just as a footnote, they back in the early 40s, I guess, they wanted Sinatra, I think, to change his name, but Sinatra wouldn't do it. Sinatra wouldn't, cut up his name or try to Americanize his name back then. So John Cougar did it, but later, when he got big enough, he went back to John Mellencamp. This is the Rare album, John Cougar. You probably haven't seen this. This is actually a sample copy, which was probably given to radio stores, radio stations. It has a cutout here, sample on the back. This has a lot of covers on it. This has it has an Elvis tune, Jailhouse Rock. It has Do You Believe in Magic, John Sebastian. It has a couple of tunes written by Cougar. It has 20th Century Fox, which is the Doors hit, and it has a Roy Orbison, Oh Pretty Woman. And Cougar wrote, it looks like 5 or 6 of these songs. So I'll show you what the original label looked like. It has an original inner, which is hard to find when you find this. That's usually lost. This is the inner, it's mint. And here we have the record on MCA, Main Man. And the record is called Chestnut Street Incident. He probably didn't get paid anything when he did this record. He probably still hasn't gotten paid for it. But, you know, Cougar's still rocking and rolling. Cougar's great. Love Cougar. Seen him early on with some of the guys that I used to go to clubs with. We saw Cougar in a club, I believe, down Jersey Shore. Next up is a album that sold, debut album that sold almost 7 million copies initially. And that was released in June of 78, number 18 on the Billboard 200. It's another band out of Boston, I like to say. The model on the cover is famous for her vivacious smile and ruby lips. And her name was Natalina Medvedeva. She was a Russian-born model, artist, singer, songwriter type of thing. But unfortunately, when I was doing my research, I found that she died at age 44, 2003, in her sleep due to a heart attack. So, and that's this album, The Cars, another band out of Boston. And that's Nadia, right there. It's a beautiful, everyone knows this album. The back has a great picture of the band, considered punk pop at the time. And this was number 18 on Billboard when it came out. And I'll show you the label. Red Electra. I believe this is her first press. And it might have an inner, which I have here. That's a great inner. Has a lot of photos. This was before, right around the time of MTV. They had a lot of hits on MTV. They became huge. On here is Good Times Roll, My Best Friend's Girl, Just What I Needed, You're All I Got Tonight, Bye Bye Love, Moving in Stereo, all mixed up. So it's essentially a greatest hits. This is something that you must have in your rock and roll collection. And it's a debut album, but like I said, this is one of the ones that was a mega hit, and they went on to greater fame. But I think this was their best-selling record. Here we have another band out of Boston, and they're called Boston. Now, Boston's first album was released in the States on August 25th, 76. This sold about 25 million copies. It peaked at number 3 on U.S. Billboard. It was a blockbuster. It clocked in at about 37 minutes, so not a whole lot of wax used. It just sounds tremendous. It's a demo quality record. Tom Schultz was an MIT-educated guitar builder and mechanical engineer. Built the pedals, built amps, built guitars, built records. He essentially recorded most of this album in his basement, less drums and vocals. So that's Boston, debut record. And I believe they went on to really, they sold just as many records later on, but not as much as the first one. I believe they had 3 records. I'm thinking they had 3 actually studio albums. And here's all the hype stickers. This was a big release. This was a phenomenal release when it came out. It, like I said, it was a blockbuster. About the same time that Meatloaf's album came out, Meatloaf's debut album as Meatloaf. This has Shrink. And here's the Orange Epic, another Columbia release. So there we have it. And my OG pressing for today that sounds super, that I love. It's actually a digital copy, but it sounds great. That's Bitches Brew. This was remastered from the analog tapes, which is what they do now anyway. So it actually is transparent. This is on Columbia. This is a gatefold. And this album is really cool. If you really want to get into jazz that's kind of psychedelia, it reminds me of a lot of 70s Santana, when Santana was into rock fusion. But this is a really nice release. This is on the Columbia Masterpiece label. It's a double record. The original was a double record. And the producer basically let them run wild in the studio. And he cut up the tapes and made, like kind of focused it, and with Miles's help. And this has only 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 tracks. It's got Wayne Shorter, soprano sax, Lenny White, Chick Corea, Jack G. Jonette, Charlie Alice, Dave Holland on bass, John McLaughlin on electric guitar, and produced by Tio Macero, this jazz producer who kind of focused this record. But this is fantastic. I believe the artist who did this cover also did a Santa record, I believe Abraxas. So, but that's a great OG pressing with audiophile sound. Miles Davis, Bitches Brew. We're waiting for the one step. That's on order. There's a one step coming. 45, I believe it might be a 45. It might be a 33. And I believe it's a one step. Could be a UHQR, but I believe it's a one step. But that's on order. So when we do get that, we will open that up here and we'll do a review. We'll debut it for you. So stay tuned. I want to thank all the subscribers. We've been hitting some nice runs, getting some new people joining us, trying to support the channel. And as always, thanks a lot. If you can subscribe, if you can like it, if you tell friends about us. And if you have any questions, I'll leave them in the comments. I'll try to answer them. Any comments? And tell me some of your debut albums. Some of your number one did. So there's so many. This was basically, which I should have noted in the beginning. This is only American groups and artists. I'm going to do one in a few days on British groups and artists. So stay tuned for that one. And keep rocking. Tony's LPs are us signing out. Thank you. Ciao.